morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate, and I was editing my book all morning. So much editing, so much editing, so much editing, but it's worth it because it's so much prettier now than it was before. At least the first 2 chapters are. Woohoo! I would like to talk to you today about Mine for Keeps by Jean Little. You'll be seeing the name Jean Little pop up several times in this series because she's a very good writer in terms of, children's lit when it comes to disability. Wow, brain fart. Okay. Jean Little had issues with some of the earlier books we had discussed in this series. She was a teacher at a school for the disabled, and her students and they both agreed that in books like Heidi and The Secret Garden, well, why can't we see more characters who are like us? They would say to her, why don't any books really exist about people who are actually like us, people who don't suddenly just magically get better, The whole idea of the miracle cure, or quotation marks, thank you. And Jean Little had to tell them she didn't know, why these sorts of books didn't exist. And I read that it had not occurred to her at the time that she could be a person to write one of these books. And she wrote several, actually. She's a very famous Canadian author, and she just recently passed away, which is depressing. But the legacy speaks for itself. So today, I would like to talk to you about one of, if not her first books, Mine for Keeps, which is about a 9-year-old girl named Sally, goes by Sal, with cerebral palsy. Now, it largely affects her legs more than it does the rest of her body. But when it comes to cerebral palsy in the real world, there are more severe cases and less severe cases. A guy I dated had cerebral palsy in his hands, and sometimes he would just sort of twitch a little bit. It was not a severe case, but cerebral palsy as a whole, as a condition, it can make your muscles twitch or be out of your control entirely, and it also weakens your muscle tension. So sometimes you may see people with cerebral palsy have maybe larger, or you might say more sort of sagging bodies than people without cerebral palsy. But in Sal's case, this character in the book, she had, up till this point, been going to a school for people with disabilities where she could be much more easily accommodated. But her parents want to transition her before she is a teenager into the mainstream schooling system. Now, the general conceit of this book is about the transition from institutionalization, or at least segregation, into a different kind of school system. I shouldn't call it full-blown institutionalization because that's a different thing, as we've covered earlier in this series. But segregated schooling versus mainstream schooling for people with disabilities. In Sal's case, the transition is rocky at first because she really doesn't know what she's doing. And her parents don't exactly know what they're doing necessarily, but they are very good about it. She says in the book quite early on that a lot of the time you're able to forget that you have cerebral palsy, except for when you can't get up and down as quickly as the other kids, when your leg brace locks up and you're not able to do it up or to undo it, things that mechanically get in the way of leading a quote normal life, right? This is Sal's normal, though. And the fact that she is being put into mainstream schooling means that she's going to have to deal with the much larger than her version of normal, quotation marks, that surrounds her now. When Sal gets to school, though, she does manage to make friends, which is good, because seeing people who can both accommodate your disability but also see you as you, either because of or in spite of your disability. This creates a lack of the master status narrative, which I really, really love, because the disability does not define the person. It's one trait of the person. It may be a very important and main trait within their life. Like, my disabilities have been quite important to the foundation of my character and to me finding the particular friend group that I have. But in Sal's case, she's not surrounded by people who have similar disabilities to her. For example, my best friend, as I believe I've said on this channel before, she's completely blind. But that's not the only reason why she and I bonded. There's a lot more going on there than just the shared, or at least partially shared, disability. I do have vision, as I have said, but there's so much more to any given individual than just one thing, you know. And I've talked about the master status narrative earlier in this series. Everyone has more than one trait to them. We should all be seen as the full package, more than we should be seen as just this one thing. When it comes to Sal, later on in the book, there's this whole idea about if you don't learn to be independent and to function in the real world. And I'm not even going to put quotation marks around that, because that's actually quite a vast concept, both in this book and in disability lit, pretty much as a whole. If you don't learn to function in the real world, then people are only going to see you for your disability. This was very much of Jean Little's point when she was writing this book and others. So Sal, having made friends, learns a bit more about how to connect with other people and about how to deal with everyday obstacles that come her way. And she also learns more about how to take responsibility for herself. She is only 9 years old when this book begins, so she's still a child, quite a young child. But at the same time, she's growing up, she's going to hit adolescence soon. And there's obviously this idea in culture that when you are growing up, you ought to take more and more responsibilities upon yourself and be able to function independently and, in a very well-rounded way within society, but also just on your own. So, the title of the book, and spoilers, by the way, I keep forgetting to mention the spoiler warning. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I didn't really give anything away thus far, but the title, spoilers, Mine for Keeps, refers to Sal getting a dog of her own. One of her friends in the book has a dog and, is able to help her learn how to train an animal to some degree. This had been a goal of Sal's, and one of the very important things about growing up too is that you establish your own goals. It's not just mommy or daddy telling you, okay, now you have to get on the bus and go to school, or okay, now I want you to go and draw me a pretty picture that I can put up on the fridge. You have to kind of cut that leash and foster your own goals, thereby fostering your own personality, because much of who we are consists of what you do. You are what you do, and you are what you think, quite frankly, I think. But Sal gets a dog of her own later on in the book, and that's what the title Mine for Keeps refers to, because she is, through hard work and dedication and individual responsibility, able to take care of this animal. And she's a very happy person because of this. It's not anymore that care has to center around me. At the very beginning of the book, she's very concerned about her own well-being, which is honestly quite realistic because she's going into this entirely new environment. And one of the very first things that happens is that her mother puts out a bunch of new clothes for her. But the problem is she also has cerebral palsy in her hands. So there's difficulty usually in getting clothes on if they have buttons or, weird weird seams in weird places and things like that. But Sal at the beginning of the book doesn't even look at the clothing that her mother has laid out for her, which are all, elastic, they're all easy to get on. And there's this whole scene where she's kind of flipping out because it's like, how can I possibly be independent? How does she expect me to dress myself? How does she expect me to function? But she's not paying attention. Pay attention to your environment. That's one of the most important lessons of being independent. Pay attention to what's actually going on around you and what the real situation is. As a personal example, this morning, my keyboard died on me and the thing takes triple A's. And I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to be able to write all day if I don't have a functioning keyboard. And then I'm like, do we have any in the house? Problem is, we don't usually keep them in the house. They're one of the things that we just don't tend to buy very often. But I go into, like my side table thing that I have my printer on in my closet, and yeah, they're there. And I'm like, okay, crisis averted, wonderful. But that is part of growing up. Pay attention to your environment, don't freak out, and just see what you can do with the cards that you are being dealt and with the tools that you have at your disposal. Sal does have tools at her disposal. She's a nice person. She's friendly. She's good to others. She can get along well enough with others, but only if she gives herself the credit that she deserves, and only if she gives herself the opportunity that she deserves. So this book is very much a Bildungsroman, which is a coming-of-age story. That's the technical term for a coming-of-age story. And how to fit into your own skin in an entirely new environment. Jean Little, I find, is very good at the Bildungsroman form, and we're going to get to more of her work that establishes that format as well, because, as I say, I'm going to be bringing up Little more than once in this series. So that is the general idea behind Mind for Keeps, the idea of independence and interdependence and learning how to function in the real world as a person with a disability. And those are all very important ideas. Please don't overlook them, no matter who you are. All right, so that is my video for today. And I do not make videos on weekends, so I will see you on Monday. Next week, before I go, is going to be my last week of videos for a little while. I'm going to take a Christmas hiatus. I'm thinking I might come back on January 4th, because that's the week before I go back to work. I'm actually quite lucky I get an extra week off work. But when I come back after that, there will be more books to talk about because there's way more than just 6 left to talk about. It will be... No, wait, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. 4 books I will be talking about next week, but then on Friday, I want to do something kind of holiday specific, if y'all don't mind. And that, I hope, will be fun for all of us. All right, so I will see you on Monday to talk about another book. I don't know which one it is. I will check the list. Fare thee well. Bye! Mwah!